The film introduces Stan, a successful real estate broker who seemingly has it all: immense wealth and a beautiful wife, Mindy. Stan has a unique, though fraudulent, method of selling properties. He deceives buyers by convincing them that an apartment has fantastic features and will appreciate greatly in value, which is untrue. After successfully persuading a skeptical woman to sign a contract, the police arrive and arrest him for first-degree fraud. Stan is convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Desperate, Stan asks his lawyer to bribe the judge. The lawyer complies, and the judge accepts the bribe but postpones the sentence, giving Stan 6 months before he must report to jail. Stan is upset to be going to prison despite the bribe, which the lawyer explains was a meager sum. The lawyer advises Stan to use the 6 months to arrange his affairs and suggests he flee to Brazil. Stan refuses, stating all his money and assets have been frozen. With no other option, Stan prepares to live out the next 6 months until his sentence begins. From that day on, Stan begins to live life at a frantic pace to maximize his time. He visits a bar and spots a heavily tattooed man, who he deduces has been in prison before. Stan offers the man $100 for advice on prison life. The man warns Stan that prison guards ignore inmate fights and even allow them to kill each other as long as no one attempts to escape. He tells Stan that based on his appearance, he'll be a constant target: the prison party. The man first suggests getting many tattoos to look like a criminal, but gives up when Stan shows him a tattoo of his mother on his arm. The man concludes Stan's only chance is to join a prison gang, like the Nazis, white supremacists, Latino, or African-American groups, but Stan doesn't fit with any. The man's final, desperate advice is that Stan must kill someone inside to earn the inmate's fear. Stan feels overwhelmed by the huge mess he's in. The next morning, Mindy encourages Stan, reminding him that his greatest strength is always finding a solution. Motivated, Stan begins working out at home and gets a tattoo on his back. He also attempts to learn karate to defend himself, but quickly gets bored. Since he's only learning basic fundamentals, he feels he doesn't have the time to continue. After fighting with a fellow student, the instructor hits and throws Stan out. Outside the dojo, Stan encounters an old man known only as the Master. Stan is impressed when the Master effortlessly breaks a brick wall with his hand. Seeing the old man as his last hope, Stan takes the Master home to live with them and train him. This deeply upsets Mindy, especially when Stan says the Master will stay for the entire 6 months. On the first day of training, the Master wakes Stan at 5 a.m. and makes Mindy prepare him terrible-tasting health drinks. The Master's training is unusual. He makes Stan practice punching his stomach with a flaming stick, hangs him from his skin to test his endurance, and feeds him strange meals like scorpions and snakes. Mindy can no longer tolerate or contain her fear of the Master, and she demands Stan get rid of him. When Stan refuses, Mindy leaves him, moving in with her mother. The Master is pleased by her departure, telling Stan it's for his own good. The real training starts now. The Master teaches Stan to break a wooden board with one finger, but Stan breaks his finger trying. When he tries to break a brick, he breaks his hand. Realizing he must start from the very basics, the Master makes Stan lift weights, places swords under his feet to push him to his physical limits during workouts, and trains Stan relentlessly for the entire 6 months. Stan lifts heavy weights, sleeps on beds of nails, and eventually masters breaking bricks with his bare hand. His skill improves so much that in one session, he even manages to outmatch the Master, who tells him he's the second-best student he's ever trained. The Master declares the training complete, save for one final test. Stan must go back and get revenge on the karate instructor who kicked him out. If he wins, he's ready for prison. Stan goes to the karate instructor, who scoffs at him and tries to attack again, but Stan easily blocks the blows and defeats him. The Master arrives, congratulates him, and confirms his training is over. Stan is ready. The lawyer and the Master escort him to the courthouse. Mindy, still not speaking to him, watches from her car. Stan and the other convicts are transported to the prison. The inmate next to Stan tries to mock him, but Stan instantly punches him in the face and warns him never to come near him again. The inmates arrive and are greeted by Warden Francis, who warns them not to disturb him or the guards, telling them that otherwise, they can do whatever they want to each other. The other inmates are terrified by his words, but Stan stands unfazed. Stan is taken to his cell, where his cellmate is an old man named Larry. Larry is dismissive of Stan and begins to bully him. Stan demands the top bunk. When Larry refuses, Stan kicks the bed with his foot. Larry, intimidated, gives up the top bunk. Stan asks Larry about the prison gangs and the most dangerous inmates. Learning about each gang and the most dangerous inmate of all, Big Ramond. Ramond is currently assaulting a new inmate. Stan approaches Ramond and challenges him in front of all the prisoners. Ramond ignores him, cursing and telling him to leave. Stan then mocks and insults Ramond in front of the crowd. Ramond snaps and charges at him, but Stan hits him, using his master-taught skills. Stan tackles Ramond to the ground, continually striking him, breaking his fingers, and kicking him until he loses consciousness. The warden watches the entire fight, thoroughly entertained. Patterson, the leader of the Nazi gang, approaches Stan and offers him a place in their crew, but Stan punches him too. Next, the African-American gang, furious at what happened to their leader Ramond, approach. Their leader orders his gang to tear Stan apart. Stan backs into the center of the yard, fending them all off. Any inmate who gets back up to fight is met with a severe beating. As their numbers overwhelm him, Stan grabs a stick and begins fighting them, breaking the stick over one of the inmates' heads. Stan continues to beat them all, with no one able to stop him. After Stan finishes off the attackers, he moves toward their leader, delivering a knockout punch that sends his teeth flying. All the inmates stand in disbelief. Stan tells the gang leader, "If you want to fight me yourself. If you come near me again, I'll knock out the rest of your teeth." Stan walks away, and all the inmates, now terrified, clear a path for him. Everywhere he goes, the inmates scatter in fear, earning him the nickname Big Stan. The timid inmate Robbie, whom Stan had saved from Ramond earlier, comes to thank him. But Stan replies, "Don't thank me. I didn't fight all those inmates for anyone but myself." Warden Francis requests to meet Stan in his office. Stan assumes the warden wants to talk about the fight, but Francis addresses him respectfully, offering him a cigar and a whiskey. Francis asks Stan's opinion of the prison land. Stan describes it as a beautiful, spacious plot surrounded by hills and close to the city. Impressed, Francis reveals he specifically requested Stan be imprisoned at his facility. When Stan asks why, Francis explains he is a partner in some real estate investments and needs Stan's expertise as a broker. In exchange, Stan's sentence will be reduced to 1 year. Stan likes the idea and agrees to help, advising Francis on how to best utilize all the space. Soon after, all the prison gangs agree to target Stan, seeking revenge. Patterson attempts to kill him with a knife, but Stan blocks him and pulls out his homemade weapon fashioned from soap and a shoelace. Stan easily beats Patterson and sends him to the infirmary. Missing his wife, Stan calls his lawyer to ask if Mindy has filed for divorce. Stan is relieved and happy when the lawyer says she hasn't. He returns to his cell, writes an apology letter to Mindy, tells her he loves her, and asks for her forgiveness. Stan continues his work for Francis, who introduces him to Dang, a former mobster and current politician. Dang is Francis's partner in a scheme to sabotage the prison and force its closure. Stan overhears them revealing their true intention. Francis wants to acquire the land for residential development. To achieve this, they need the inmates to constantly fight and be shot by guards, which would compel the state to shut down the poorly managed facility. Having heard the plot, Stan feels a responsibility to help his fellow inmates, even though they want to kill him. The next day, Stan gathers all the inmates to establish new rules. First, he gets rid of all violent, bloody films, claiming they negatively influence the men. He declares that rape is forbidden and no one is allowed to assault another inmate. He challenges anyone who disagrees to step forward and fight him. Terrified, the inmates all back down. Stan puts on music and makes them dance, even forcing rivals to become friends. At lunchtime, Robbie and some weaker inmates approach Stan to thank him for preventing the assaults and ask to join his gang. Stan agrees, declaring, "We are all one gang now." A letter arrives from Mindy, informing Stan that she is pregnant, which makes him incredibly happy. The relationship among all the inmates improves. They stop fighting, become genuine friends, and the prison environment is transformed, all thanks to Stan. Francis is furious at the lack of fighting and orders Stan to his office. Francis tells him that an inspection committee is visiting the following week. The inmates must start fighting and killing again. When the committee sees the chaos, the guards will be forced to shoot the prisoners to end the riot. The state will then be forced to close the prison and sell the land, which Francis will buy for his project. Francis threatens to increase Stan's sentence if the scenario doesn't happen and warns that Dang will take over killing the inmates. He tells Stan to comply so he can get out quickly. The next day, Stan calls his lawyer, who advises him to obey the dangerous Francis for his own good. Stan wakes up the following day and tells the guard he accepts Francis's offer. Stan addresses the inmates loudly, announcing that he no longer cares what happens in the prison and will not intervene, even if they burn each other alive. He leaves, and immediately, everyone starts fighting. Francis is delighted. That night, Larry refuses to sit with Stan but grabs his hand, pleading with him not to go out to the yard tomorrow. Larry realizes Stan is being forced, so he warns all the other inmates, and they begin to formulate a plan. Francis arranges a parole board meeting for Stan, claiming Stan's behavior has been excellent. However, Stan remembers his fellow inmates and decides not to betray them. He tells the parole board he is extremely dangerous and has been involved with many gangs. Surprised, the board decides not to release him. The guard takes Stan back to his cell. Mindy and the master, who thought Stan was getting out, are there. Stan tells them he will be staying a little longer. He then hits the guard and runs out to warn the inmates, knowing Francis will order them shot if they fight. At the same time, Francis is giving the inspection committee a tour. Guards hand out weapons to the inmates to fight. Dang confronts Stan, revealing that he, too, was trained by the master and was his best student. The two enter a fierce battle. Dang is powerful, but Stan, through his superior training, manages to strike Dang's nose, defeating him and proving the master trained him better. The inmates flood into the yard. The guards wait for them to fight so they can open fire, but Stan is surprised to see the prisoners turn on music and start dancing. They understood Francis's plan after Larry warned them. Furious, Francis grabs a rifle from a guard and fires wildly. The inspection committee witnesses the chaos and tells Francis he will be punished. Stan tells Francis, "It's over. Your plan is exposed." Francis raises his gun to kill Stan, but Mindy saves him, revealing that she had been training with the master the entire time. The scene cuts to 3 years later. Stan has completed his sentence and is returning home. All the inmates, whose lives and the prison's conditions he improved, bid him farewell. They truly love each other now. Francis is now a prisoner in the facility. Stan walks out and meets his wife, the master, and finally sees his 3-year-old daughter.